I've got the engine balanced using the vacuum gauge on top of each carburetor. They are balanced there, as are the idle screws. However, I think that I'm still running rich. And I think that's because, what I was reading up, I think that is because the mechanical fuel pump is providing too much pressure to the carburetors and it's overpowering the needle and seat and just forcing gas into the engine. So I have got a fuel pressure regulator here, a fuel pressure gauge here. I'm going to make sure that our fuel pressure regulator is reading no more than 3 psi, which is what I read up on, and that's recommended. So we'll get this set to 3 psi, and then eventually we'll take this pressure gauge out and we'll see if that makes a difference. So let's get the engine started. We're actually reading a little over 3, so maybe that's not it. So I'm gonna push in the regulator, turn this nozzle so we bring it down to 3 psi, and it should still be at 3 psi. We're there at 3 psi. Didn't seem to do it much, but still running smooth. Let's see if that makes a difference. Since we're running rich, I talked to some good old mechanics at the shipyard about my issues, and I've also done some reading online. And the thing we're going to check is the carburetors themselves. We're going to make sure that we have the right size jets and we have the right size or right value for the power valve. And then while I've got these off, I'm also going to make sure that everything is good and sealed, because we're reaping gasoline out the side of the carburetor somewhere. So let's get started taking this apart. First thing we're going to check, take off the top, and we're going to check the jets, and then we'll take the second section off so that we can check the power valve. Okay, so those jets are right here. We're going to remove them and see what numbers are imprinted on them. So with my reading glasses on and a magnifying glass and the light just right, I'm going to try and find some numbers on the side here, which this one, let's see, I can see the 5, 51. Okay. This one doesn't appear to have any numbers on it. Oh, there's something on the top. Let's see what that says. I don't know if those are numbers or scratches, but they're definitely not marked. Okay, so what I know, or what is suggested, is that, wow, these two are, check this out. These two are definitely not jetted the same. Look how different those two holes are. Hopefully that shows up in the camera. One is huge, one is small. Okay, so there are 2 carburetors on this engine. And from what I understand, the front carburetor will always draw more air. Will always draw more, so that needs to be your primary carburetor. And with that one, we're going to put 51s on. So we already have what this says is 51, but I have no idea if that's true or not. And then in the rear, secondary carburetor, the jets should be smaller. So we're going to put 49s. So I'm just going to replace all of them with something that is known. So I have the new jets, 49 and 51. And then also, to do the math, we'll have to see. You know what, we'll talk about that when we get to the power valve. But for now, this is the rear carburetor, so that means it's the secondary, so I'm going to look for my 49s, and I'm going to install those in for the jets. So let's see what size these are. $51, I can read that clearly. Okay, so that goes on the other one. 50, 50, 90, right? So that makes these my 49s. Let's see if they look about the same. No, we don't. 49. 49. Okay, well, I'm going to trust the thing if we do it. Now we're going to put that jet in, one each side. If you have little bitty fingers, which I sort of have little bitty fingers, you can start this in with your hand, or at least get it lined up to the point that you can get that screwdriver in to start it off. Okay, jets taken care of. Again, secondary carburetor, 49 jets. We'll take this section off to get to the power valve. Power valve, economizer valve, whatever. It's when you give it some gas, the vacuum is going to drop in the system, and the power valve, which is normally held closed by vacuum, when it gets to a certain value, whatever value it's set to, it will then open and give that extra bit of gasoline that it needs when it bogs down under full open conditions. Now, I suspect that my power valves were set to open at too high of a vacuum level. So let's see. Yep, that's what I suspected. Okay. So on here, if you were able to see it, let me verify. Let me go ahead and yeah, that's a 7 and a 5. Okay, so this is a 7 on this side and a 5 on this side, which means that it's set to open at 7.5 inches of mercury. Now, the math for this is typically your flathead will pull 15 inches of mercury vacuum in a normal situation. So you want your power valve to open at about half of that. So if the vacuum were to drop by half, then your power valve would open and you would get your little burst of fuel necessary to keep the engine running. I have 7.5 in this one. That makes me suspect that the other one has 7.5 also. Well, you want to do the math based off of how many carburetors you have. So 15 psi, or 15 inches of mercury, 15 inches of mercury vacuum for the flathead overall. Divide that in half to get where you want it to open, and that's 7.5. Well, that's only one carburetor. But since we have 2, you then have to divide that 7.5 by half again so that you can correctly open each carburetor at the right time. So 7.5 divided by 2 is somewhere between 3.5 and 4.5, which is how these power valves are set. So the recommendation given to me is that we go with the 3.5, and that will make it run a little lean, and then we can richen it with our mixture screws. So this being 7.5, I'm going to switch it out. I have 2 3.5 power valves. So we'll get to this one first, change it out, and then we'll get to put it all back together, and then we'll get to the front carburetor to change those pieces out. Oh, it wasn't in there very tight either. All right, old one, get that away from me. New one with gasket, verify. Values. See a 3 and a 5, 3.5, all right. Lord, I hope that this fixes the problem. It's tight. Gasket's still good. Add this to the bottom. So, just for your own curiosity, because I know everyone's asking, how does this power valve work? Okay, so pressure drops inside the system, which is seen here. The spring is able to open up, which sprays a bit of fuel into this area here. Notice there's this hole here, which if you were able to follow down, then goes right down into the intakes via this hole here, down below the butterflies, and that would inject a bit of fuel into your system. A little bit of rust here, surface rust, that we can just wipe off. Let's make sure if we're putting it back together, we'll put it back together nice and clean. Something I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to remove this and make sure that it is set correctly. Yes. Don't want to have to take these off again. Because if the float is not set correctly and it is coming up to its highest point and not sealing off the flow of fuel into the reservoir, then it's just going to continue to push fuel in past the jets, and that might be making it run rich. So let's go ahead and check that. This pin. And now we'll go and set this correctly. I have made a jig to test the float. So, from research I've done, the float should be set to a specific height off of this surface. Now, make sure that you have your gasket in when you do this measurement, because you have to make up for the gap of the gasket. So what you do is you measure from this surface, and the bottom of your float should come up that high to the bottom. And you want to do it on both sides to make sure that it's even. Now, they recommend 1 5/16" be that height if you are level, if your engine is level in the car. Mine has a slight backwards tilt, which means that with the engine going back like this, that means that your level is going to be a little bit uneven in here, but it's going to be, see those jets right there? It means it's going to be weighted to this side, and when your engine is hot and you turn it off, it could continue to feed fuel into the engine, and you don't want that. So you set it, if you have that case, they recommend that you set it a 1/16 inch higher, which means 1 3/8". So I need to adjust this float. I did change out the float. This one, it just looks crappy. It's perfectly fine, it floats, but this one's pretty. And I also took it in and with some hot water, stuck it in the hot water to make sure it wasn't bubbling out, to make sure that this is completely sealed, and it is, so this is a good float. So now I'm going to remove it, adjust the tab back here, because as you can see, we need to come up a little bit. Okay, so let's do that. Want it to come up, so we're going to want to move this tab further out. So take a little screwdriver. We will raise this tab up just a little bit. Let's see what that does. Lots of little parts to keep track of. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a bald eagle outside calling. Anyway, you can see it did come up, but it's still just a little shy. Evenness on both sides. Just a little shy. And now we've taken a little bit too high. That might be it. Let's put it on that side. Let's check this side. Okay, that's it. That one's set. One thing, as I was milling around here doing things, I noticed I forgot to put these screws back in, so let's get to that. Be careful with these are brass, so you don't want to mar them or round out this corner in here because it's a flat and bare to get off if it is. Some good ugga on that. All right, now we are good to put our top back on. All right, this one I've made the adjustments. So put this back together and I'll get the second carburetor off and we'll get to that. Okay, we got primary carburetor open. While we're here, already rechecked the float, make sure that it does not leak. It does not leak. And I adjusted it so that we have our 1 3/8. Okay, now set that aside. Let's take a look at our jets. Find out what's going on. These are all good. Let's check to see what we've got for jets on this one. Probably 51s also, which hopefully they're correct. We'll change my way for 49s. One and 51. In case you're wondering, the jets do not have gaskets. Just they're directly in. Okay, jets in. Let's check the power valve. All right. Ooh, there's some fuel in there. 7.5. I think we may have found our problem. Our power valves are set to open too early. And so that explains why when it would run just fine on idle. And then when I would give it a little gas, it would bog down. And that's because it was opening those power valves, economy valves, very early and flooding the engine with fuel before it needed it. So let's change that out for the 3.5. That should be enough. Now, I have a number of carburetors that I've rebuilt just for fun, collecting different pieces, parts, because I wanted specific things. Like I got this one late, just like the other one, because I liked the body that has the vacuum ports that I can use for other stuff. Like this has the PCV attached to it. But because I have all those extra parts, I can scavenge off of them. So I found a washer, lock washer for this. And in another body I have correct size gaskets. So I'm gonna steal these. And this might be a solution to my leaking problem, because remember when I took the other ones off, I could smell and it's wet. So I think it might be because the gaskets are incorrect on that one. I'll also show you, this is what happens to those brass bolts, nuts. when they're mistreated. So just as a comparison, gaskets, the one that was on before, the one that matches the other one, significantly bigger, probably provides a better sealing surface. All right, jets changed, power valve changed, new gaskets, hopefully, and a leakage problem. There's that little push pin to line everything up. All right, I'm gonna put this back together and I'll see you back at the engine. We'll do a test run. Carburetors are rebuilt. They're installed, and I've started the engine. And I've solved the revving issue. As you recall, anytime before when I would rev the engine, it would almost die unless I opened the throttle slow. And I didn't know why. And I think since I've solved that, what happened was I changed out the power valves. Remember, I changed out the power valves and I changed out the jets. And I think the power valves have solved the issue. Only problem is now it idles like crap. That's a little frustrating because it was idling just fine before we did this. And I can't imagine why the power valves or the jets would make it so that it idles poorly. And it's still running rich. So I was thinking about it and I thought to myself, well, since we've been running rich for a while, let's check the spark plugs. See if they're fouled with soot. And I took the spark plugs out and yes, they were black, blacker than night. So I brushed those off and I haven't run it since I did that. I took all 8 of them out, brushed them all off, cleaned them all off. They were all black. And I'm thinking if that is the problem, I don't know yet because I haven't started it, we'll see. If that is the problem, then that means that it hasn't been firing regularly. Each cylinder hasn't been firing regularly because the spark plugs haven't been sparking regularly. So that means there has been a lot of extra gasoline pulled in every stroke or every other revolution, pulled in, and then it doesn't get ignited. So either it gets pushed out of the exhaust or it lingers inside of the cylinder. And that might cause it to run rich in the instance that when I would give it a little bit of starter fluid as it's running up in the carburetor, it would bog down. So if there's already excess fuel in the cylinder, when it finally does fire, that's a rich situation. If we can get the cylinders to fire every time, every firing stroke, that might solve the problem. One of the other things I noted too when it was idling is it sounds like it's sucking a lot of air. There's actually a sound of it pulling air through, and I don't recall that having happened before I changed out the power valve and jets. And again, I don't know what would have changed to make it do that. There's nothing blocking it. I've looked in the intake manifold. There's nothing blocking it. There's nothing blocking the butterflies in the carburetor. So the one change that I've done here since I've ran it before is I've cleaned off the spark plugs to get all the carbon off of them, and now I'm going to start it up. I'm a little worried. I don't know. Hopefully this simple little thing will fix it, but let's see. Let's give this a try. It's been a minute since I've started up, so I'm going to give it a little help. smoother. This is better than before. Still, almost sounds like it's missing a cylinder. Smoothing out. Well, that definitely helped things. That's for sure. That definitely helped things clean off those spark plugs. Now, let's see if it's running rich. Air bogged down there. Let's see. Still running rich. See how it slows down a little bit? Not terrible. Okay, so see about what that means. I'm gonna go sniff the exhaust and see if it smells like gas. Pretty stinky. I'm gonna run this gets up to temperature. That's been up to temperature in a while. Oops. Solve the accelerating issue. Looks like this one is dripping. The Venturi is dripping instead of a spray. I want to get a flashlight and take a look. I don't know if that's how high of an idle I want. Let me show you what's going on. I don't know if you can see that. Hopefully you can. You see that Venturi? See that liquid gas that's coming out as compared to here? Look down there. You can't see any dripping because it's all coming out atomized in both of the Venturis. But over here, get the light right. You can see liquid just coming out. Basically, we're dumping gasoline in there. So I think we might have found our rich problem. All right. Well, it might be running rich, but it's finally running smooth. Look, the radiator isn't vibrating as much. Just a little bit. Okay. Let's just solve that carburetor problem, and we'll go from there. Well, I put a call for help out onto the internet at FordBarn.com. Wonderful resource for anybody who's trying to get into and understand old Fords. I put out a call for help to figure out what's going on with my system. Put a post on there, told them what my setup was, told them my issues, and I told them what's currently going. Gentleman came back Bore and stroked, if you're watching, thank you very much. I'm going to try your suggestion. What I need to do is I need to use my linkage, which I forget where I put it. Put it down somewhere. Anyway, the linkage for the two carburetors. Basically, I'm only going to use one idle screw, the rear idle screw. And the front one will not be used because the linkage is what's going to keep the two carburetors in sync with each other. So I'm going to get the rear carburetor to the point where it's idling as smoothly as possible. And then I'm gonna give it a little bit of gas, keep the RPMs elevated. And I'm going to use the unison to find out what my vacuum is. Then I'm going to come forward to, while it's still at that same RPM, I'm going to come forward to this carburetor and get the same vacuum. I'm going to adjust the, well, since I don't have my sync on there, my throttle linkage, I'm going to use the idle screw to open up the throttle to where it matches the vacuum that this one is pulling. At that point, I'm going to turn off the engine and I'm going to install my linkage back off that idle screw on the front carburetor, and then I'm going to adjust the mixture of fuel at that point through the idle screws to where we get the best idle. So with that explanation happening, I'm trying not to talk while I'm doing it, so I'll just let y'all watch. I've already been running it a little bit to get it up to temperature, so we don't have to wait for that, so we can get right into it. Okay, I found where the vacuums are even. But my throttle screw will not take it that far. Probably the reason why Ford Stroke recommend that I use the throttle linkage.
while the front one is sucking oil. That for the idle on the rear. This vacuum is going right through the bottom indicator. This had gas on it, I put it in my mouth. Ugh. I'm out of gas again. Out of gas. Well, let's go get some gas. For a while, this is going to be the last engine installment. I figured out what was going on. First and foremost, that pressure regulator that I put on to fix the spraying, or just basically pouring of fuel down into the carburetors, it worked, but the pressure was still high and it was still doing it a little bit. So I ended up getting a different pressure regulator that actually has the pressure. I mean, the allowance of pressure on that one is as low as it goes, I believe, but it's working. It's not spraying, and that works out really well. But also, I was having a problem with missing cylinders. Turns out it was the spark plugs. Broke it all down. I had a second set of spark plugs. The first ones were NGKs, the seconds were Champions. Took out the NGKs, put the Champions in, and voila, no missing. So, give it a little, and there's no hesitation on yep, sounds good, sounds strong, running smooth, not bouncing around. So with that, I'm going to call the engine done, balanced, ready to go, ready to have a body put on and steering wheel and be able to drive itself around. Thanks for watching. I hope you've enjoyed me getting this engine started and working correctly. See you next time.